we'll call the Planning Commission meeting of February 22nd, 2010 to order. And at this time, we'll call for any public comment on any item not currently listed on the agenda. And seeing none, we'll move into our first.
You can take a roll call.
Oh, we do. Oh, we do. All right. Well, let's do that then.
Chair Powell?
Here.
Commissioner Lajoie? Commissioner Dunn?
Not here.
Commissioner Groner?
Here. All right. Now we can get moving into adoption of Planning Commission meeting minutes for February 8, 2010. We've all read through those. Are there any corrections or changes to be made?
None.
No, I thought it was well done. Thank you very much for whoever did that. So I'll look for a motion to accept those minutes as read.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Pete, call roll.
Let's see. Chair Powell?
Aye.
Commissioner Lajoie? Aye. Commissioner Dunn? Sorry. Commissioner Dunn? Aye. Commissioner Groner? Aye. Okay. Motion carries.
All right, very good. Now into our first hearing. This is a legislative hearing regarding the Oregon City Code Amendments, our 6-month update. This is L08-01, which we've all come to know and love. And staff is Christine on this, so we'll turn it over to you. I don't believe we need to read any legal things here, do we, for a legislative? No, thank you. So let's move forward.
Thank you, Chair Powell and Commissioners. This evening we've tried to put together the whole packet of the work we have done over the last few months. Plus, I'd like to update outstanding issues with you and go over some changes that we have made since the last time we met with you. And both Mr. Walter and I will go through the memo and pick out just the issues that are new. But before we begin, there's 3 exhibits on your dais that I want to enter into the record this evening. Exhibit A, you'll see proposed changes to Chapter 12.04.25, and this was inadvertently left out by our engineering division. Bob Carlson thought he had given this to us. So what this is the engineering policy on curb cuts that they'd like to formally codify. And so this, what you see right there, is the adopted policy that the engineering division has for what you can and can't do with curb cuts. And it also helps a lot with code enforcement, especially people who put 2x4 plywood over curbs to try to hop up over to get access to their RVs, or aren't doing drainage correctly, or trying to get an illegal second access. So they wanted to move forward and move from a policy to a codification, and that's what's in your dais tonight. The second, and that'd be Exhibit A. The second one, you'll see, starts with Chapter 17.49, and these are just some grammatical edits from Garby Schubert Bear, and these don't really affect the content, and I, as staff, would like to recommend that we just enter the record and we update them when we send this to the City Commission. The last one is Exhibit C, which is a letter from Dan Berg, dated February 22nd, 2010. And I will speak about this later this evening, but I wanted to get those 3 things. They actually have already been uploaded onto the agenda, so people in the audience, if you want to take a look at the electronic agenda on our website, these have already been uploaded. And they should be uploaded on yours as well.
Thank you.
If I would like to go to page 171 of 180 in your packet, and what specifically I'm looking at, if you are just clicking on the exhibit, is the Planning Commission memo looking at the updates, not the staff report, but the memo from the staff report. I'd like to go over some outstanding issues with you, and you can follow along. So, know if you haven't gotten there yet.
Who was that again?
171 out of 180.
Oh, great, okay.
Okay, the very bottom of this page, the first outstanding issue is temporary structures. And the planning commission met in December and in January to discuss. Oh, sorry.
Second, we need to find it back on here. Go back. I'll just throw those guys.
Just a memo, just
Oh, describing proposed amendments is the title.
save pages.
Got it.
Okay. Down at the bottom of page 1. Looking at temporary structures. Just to recap, temporary structures were discussed in depth by the Planning Commission, looking at how they would be regulated, unofficially under 200 square feet. The code changes haven't been amended since the last time we spoke, but I have one request from the Planning Commission to get a verification as I re-look over the proposed language. Those are intended for not only membrane structures, but for metal accessory buildings. Because membrane isn't quite the right word for that, so there may need to be a tweak to also include the metal temporary structures. I just wanted to reconfirm that that was included in the general. So when we pass this to City Commission, we'll also make sure that the wording identifies metal. But it's the same. The code looks at, can you see it from the public right away at pedestrian level is the main gist. And if you can, it will not be allowed. We will also be sending the code changes back to the CIC. This was previously in January, but I want to reiterate to the CIC that both the neighborhood associations want to get more involved in this. Please come to the City Commission level. So far, I've yet to hear from the CIC since the last time I sent information, and I'm going to take the next step to really explain what are the intricacies of what we're saying. So I want to make sure that they are involved in this process before it gets adopted, rather than just put on their laps. And so they will be doing at the March CIC meeting, at least at the meeting, I'm sending them a really detailed letter explaining the next step of the process and how they can get involved.
Yeah.
Next on page 2 is archaeological resources. And I want to go into this a little bit because there are some proposed code changes on this.
I did have one question about the membrane. We had said abutting public right away, and you have that in your memo, but I didn't see that in the actual language.
Sure.
Will not be visible from the right of way when viewed at pedestrian level. I don't see abutting in there.
Let me get the page number.
Page number 105 of 180 in the packet.
That's a good comment. We should add abutting. I will note that. I think that makes it much more explicit.
That's what we had talked about last time too, so thank you.
Archaeological resources. I shifted a little bit, and I wanted to give you some background information on that. The last time I met with you, Susan White, assistant archaeologist from the State Historic Preservation Office, was meeting with the City Commission to go over a proposed archaeological sensitivity map, where portions of the city were known and potential archaeological resources would be identified with a big enough buffer that you wouldn't know specific sites. And if a project that involved grading, like a subdivision or a new building, would be located in that area, then as part of completeness review, the applicant was required to get an informational letter from the State Historic Preservation Office that spelled out recommended monitoring techniques. It was not a requirement to require these, but it was to get that information based on where you are located and the known archaeological entities. This is what we suggest as the State Historic Preservation Office. That archaeological sensitivity map, upon further work, she realized she could not do within kind of her general scope of public outreach, and recommended that it was done through a consultant through a separate RFP grant process. So unfortunately, that wasn't really the path I thought we were going down, but it is what it is. And she recommended some other options, and I provided code amendments for one option. I wanted to give those options to you. One is that the Planning Commission City Commission move forward with the recommended code amendments, which I'll explain, and then one day adopt this map that will supersede these code amendments. Two, the City Commission and Planning Commission do not make any code changes, wait for the map to be created, and then subsequently go back and amend the code to reflect that. Or C, just adopt these code changes and don't make the map. And what the code changes are is we need an archaeological recommendation letter from SHPO as a completeness requirement in subdivisions, partitions, site plan and design review, and historic review. So if you are going to those 4 land use applications, so you're actually paying for and applying for a land use application under those 4 proposals, you will need to submit that as a completeness item in your application. It doesn't mean that we are enforcing it. Once again, it just means it's a completeness issue. And we look at anything with requiring ground disturbance, and I am defaulting in my code amendments to SHPO's definition of ground disturbance, which is the movement of native soils, which is about anything over about 2 bucket loads of soil. So if you had kind of fill on top of your property and you were grading out and you were never getting to native soil, that wouldn't require it. If you were just redoing siding on your Main Street building, that wouldn't require it for minor site plans. So when we look at does your proposed project, if it fits in one of those 4 applications, involve ground disturbance. If it does, then you're required to get this letter. What it doesn't, if it's not involved, is if you're doing a grading permit or a building permit outside the land use process. So I'm a commercial property owner and I'm getting a grading permit for something that falls below the threshold of site plan design review. This SHPO letter won't be required because we don't have really a mechanism to get there with it. So it's really just you have to be triggered for site plan design review, minor partition, subdivision, or historic review under the land use application. And that's really the compromise. If we can't get the archaeological sensitivity map, then we have to kind of require everybody. So at that point we said, well, what's reasonable? Because it could take up to 30 days to get this letter. Well, it's reasonable if you are in the land use application, because it's just another application submittal that you'll need to put together. And so that's, in this proposal, is how we've framed it in a way to get after the City Commission's request, which is we want some extra review on or understanding how archaeological sensitivity can be brought into the planning process. But it's not here to kind of put a 30-day hindrance on small projects. We had to draw a line. So that's where we are in these proposed changes. And you'll see that in specifically, if I go to page 3 of the memo, for example, under 1608 subdivisions, we now require the SHPO archaeological letter part of completeness. You go to chapter 1616 partitions, you go to chapter 1740 and chapter 1762, those are all now in the completeness section of submittal requirements. The SHPO letter language is added in there. So
the SHPO letter would be a requirement, as you said here, and that SHPO letter, so I understand this, basically SHPO will discuss this with them and say this area is potentially a problem, or potentially it's a
you won't recommend anything other than,
which is what we've been operating on for ever. And what would be the time frame on requiring that the map, the buffer map?
It's really a secondary process. We'd have to apply for we'd have to find a consultant, figure out what the money we want for the match. But what Susan White was saying is because of the density of Oregon City, our history, the size of the city, it just wasn't within her scope, and she really didn't get that understanding until she was a couple of hours into the project, and then she realized this was above and beyond her public education helping role that she was taking on as assistant archaeologist.
Is the SHPO, the current SHPO map or whatever they use, is that relatively comprehensive?
The Historic Preservation Office, the Archaeological Division, they have all their known sites, but you have to be an archaeologist to get access to that information. And so you and I cannot go down to the Historic Preservation Office and want to see where the archaeological sites are. And that's always been the problem, is I can't tell a developer, oh, that's going to be close to some historic sites. You may want to be careful. So we thought that this sensitivity map of carving out areas of the city where we know there are not either archaeological sites or the tendency to have archaeological sites, and concentrate in certain areas. We thought that was a way of explaining to the development community, we have done some analysis and some work, and we are focusing on certain areas.
No, so saying that now, if a developer decides that they want to pursue it, and we assume that, let's say we recommend that option one, if we go through with this code amendment change, will they require them to hire an archaeologist?
No, but the letter does. The State Historic Preservation Office is recommending monitoring techniques, and that can be anything between keep an eye out when you're digging, which is probably be their default answer no matter where you are in the city, to you know you are near existing archaeological sites. We recommend you have an archaeologist on site during the 2 days you're digging to monitor what's going on, and then they file a 2-page report. So, maybe in the extreme cases they know there's a known archaeological site, and it's that spectrum. But what it is the Historic Preservation Office can't require you to do anything, but what they can require is once you've dug something, you begin digging, and you find something, there's some ORSs that can allow them to put a stop work order on your project. And so what this does is it helps the developer understand, and it also helps the neighborhood understand, are there known archaeological resources near me? And if there are, it helps the neighborhood say, okay, well, if the developer is choosing to ignore the SHPO's letter, which they can, we as a neighborhood, may want to make sure that we're having a little more monitoring on the project. Or as a developer, it's much easier to do a little bit of work beforehand, and maybe those 2 days have that archaeologist and file that little report, than have someone coming in with a stop work order in the middle of a project. Majority of this is going to be nothing to monitoring and a 2-page report.
Thank you.
Are we referencing the sensitivity map and
Nope.
any of the code updates?
No, so that's really the 3 options. The sensitivity map is really a whole separate project, and we can either say this is fine because we feel that we're getting to everybody now anyway, and we're just happy with this solution, and the sensitivity map is a great idea, but we're just going to default to this, or let's work on the sensitivity map in the next couple of years. Once we get adopted, we'll amend our code to adjust that, or we don't want to do anything and we only want to do the sensitivity map, and that will have to happen through a separate process. And so what I propose is kind of option 1, which is the proposed code. I was getting direction from the city commission that they wanted to pursue this, so I was trying to find an option that moved forward with what their goals were without having this map. And that's really where we are today on this.
So you are implementing a requirement for the letter from the Preservation Office
As a completeness item.
as a complete.
Yeah.
What is the turnaround time to get a letter like that?
I'll show you I'll show you this red line section because it's 30 days, and I'll tell you how we write it when you get to the page number that has the code. Let's find. Okay, I have it at page 92, which is page 5 of 39 of the 1762. That's page 111 out of 180. I'll read what basically was the same default 2 sentences for each section. For projects that will involve ground disturbance, a letter from Oregon State Historic Preservation Office Archaeological Division indicating the level of recommended archaeological monitoring on site will be required prior to obtaining completeness from the city. If after 45 days notice from the applicant, the Oregon State Historic Preservation Office fails to provide comment, the city will not require the letter as part of the completeness review. And I put 45 days in here. It can be changed to 30. They generally have a policy that they'll get back to. They have a policy that they'll get back within 30 days. They're required to get back for any federal projects within 30 days, but this doesn't require them. And so I have to make it 45 days or 30 days. I defaulted at 45. But the idea is, if for some reason the State Historic Preservation Office has decided that they're not going to spend staff time on this, the applicant can notice it. And if I call at the time of completeness and say, when did the applicant turn this request in? Has it been X days? Yes or no? And I can move on from there on my completeness. Now, in direction 30 to 45 days, I can amend that, but that's really kind of the time span I was looking for. Was 30 to 45.
It's 45 days. I mean, that puts them into jeopardy with any of our.
No, this is, this is the time where, they'll know about this before the pre-application conference, or they'll know about it at the pre-application conference, and our goal is to have a default template letter where they put in their address and they send it like that day almost, and so that gets the ball rolling. And really rarely do you ever have an applicant coming in 30 and 45 days after the pre-application conference. Usually it takes them 2 to 3 months to get their packet put together. So it would have to be a very odd, rush project in order. And then at that point, maybe we can try to get them. But the goal is just put a letter to the State Historic Preservation Office with the default address and the default map showing where they are. And that's what they need.
I think 45 days would be.
In section 16, you're referencing 30 days. I think 45 days would be
Okay.
more appropriate as well.
Okay.
You should probably be consistent across the sections.
We all agree that version 1 would be the right way to go.
Any recommendation on kind of that option 1, 2, 3? I can pass over to City Commission. You'd like the map in the long run, but
Yeah, I think something we need to be considering our history, considering the potential, long-term growth down by the falls and things that could happen down there. I think it's important that we do that.
to understand as a
Yeah.
city where,
At some point, I'm not saying put a date on it, but I think at some point we really need to have that available.
I feel like that balance that you can't ever give people sites, but you can give amorphous areas to get people education and understanding. Okay. On page 2 of our memo, the next outstanding issue, representing commercial land in the South End area, myself, planning staff was working with the Citizen Involvement Committee on potential survey of the South End area about commercial amenities they may want to see for staffing reasons and planning of the South End concept plan that's been put on hold, and we'll get back to you. We have a better understanding if that's going to be done separately or within the South End concept plan process. So we'll have a better understanding later this year. But I've met with the CSE and let them know that it is on hold for the time being.
Is there a South End concept plan?
There needs to be a South End.
Absolutely, I'm just wondering if it has started at this point.
No.
South End Neighborhood Association
Yes.
as well.
And we've been in the survey aspect, we've been very much in contact with them, and they've been aware of that this has been placed on hold. Updates, nothing's changed. We'll be doing that in a separate process, and we'll get back to you after this legislative file with timeline at a maybe future work session. We want to start tackling that. And once again, regulation of trees on private property, per the direction of the City Commission, that is going to be put on hold until after the 5 years of kind of moratorium on new projects after the fire annexation. So that's put on hold at this time, but we can continue putting that on work session to look at when it actually happens, how you want to go about doing that and how you want to get the public involved.
Explain to me why that's a new project. I guess I don't understand their position on that.
I'll defer this to Mr. Conkle if he wants to.
Relocating trees on private property. I mean, the comment was that we're going to wait 5 years because of the moratorium on developing new programs. Well, why is that a new program? I mean, this has been associated with many things in the past.
I think we're estimating anywhere from 1 to 1.5 new full-time equivalently positions in order to manage and implement and regulate the tree cutting permit process and enforcement throughout the city on private property. So I think that's where the no new positions is coming from.
We have no active natural resources committee
Correct.
to participate in that. That makes sense. Right? That makes more sense to me then.
That's the rationale. It would be quite. I mean, the amount of time we currently just spend on street trees is overwhelming. To try and regulate it citywide, implement a brand new program, permitting process, fees, et cetera. I mean, it's really a position, at least a position, which we just don't have right now.
Thanks. Yeah, what he said.
So that's the update of the outstanding issues. I'd like to take you through the rest of the memo where it talks about kind of the annotated changes to the code amendments. I'm just going to highlight the new changes, and then Mr. Walter's going to come down and speak about changes to 1741 tree protection and 1749 natural resource, and then I'll do a brief update, or he will do a brief update on our consolidated responses to any of the proposed upzoning or downzoning by citizens, which is on the back here, last page of your memo. Let's see. Under tonight, we discussed the new requirement for archaeological resources. Section 4 membrane definition was actually put in. Page 4, 1740 Historic Overlay District, the archaeological letter is put in. And this is just for projects that are applying for historic review. So if I am a single family historic homeowner and I'm working on a staff level approval for something I'm doing that doesn't require a full 1740 review, this will not be required. So most things that are requiring the Historic Review Board to review a ground disturbance at a public hearing is going to be a new building or a large or an addition. And so that's a nice break between burdening the historic homeowner with small changes and then doing large new projects in the historic district. Let's ask Pete to come down to speak to the changes in 1741 and 1749.
Any planning commissioners? Since last meeting to review 1741 and 1749, staff had made some new changes with respect to modification of dimensional standards in the tree protection code. These are designed to be incentives in the event that a tree protection tract is proposed on a property, in the case of chapter 1741. And what staff was working on with these two changes in both sections of the code, 1749 and 1741, is to use the same table in both codes, in both chapters, to specify what the minimum with reductions in setbacks, lot width, lot depth, and lot size would be permitted.
And this is page 57 of 180, and first is 1741 100. You'll see a table A, on the next page a table B, and a table C.
And the reason for this was just to provide a bit greater specificity. And the new language is in the middle of page 57 of 180, or page 47, section 1741 100. The applicant may choose to make the adjustments over as many lots as required. For example, the lot size reduction could be spread across all the remaining lots in the proposed subdivision or partition, or could be applied only to those needed to incorporate the area of the tree tract. So we want to specify that. However, you would still need to meet the minimum average lot size throughout the subdivision.
Wanted to give people an option, because depending on the market and the builder, they may want to just split the difference of the tree tract across all 20 lots, or they need it on it.
So, I'm sorry.
Oh, but the idea, if you have 3 really, really small lots, you had to create new setbacks and dimensional standards for those. And so that's what tables A, B, and C help you do. No matter what zone you are, this is the resulting lot that's created, and that's the setback you'll get.
Table B is the standards for detached single-family residential. Table C is the reduced standards for single-family attached or two-family units. Bottom is that a 0-foot setback is only allowed on single-family attached units. And under section 1741-120, below that table, there is a specification that in no case may a side yard setback be reduced less than 3 feet. This is a fire code issue and something that we need to keep in the code. On the next page, page 59 of 180, last sentence in section 1741-120 would basically, rather than provide a complex calculation for how much the fee in lieu payment is, we were going to refer to the adopted fee schedule, and then the fee schedule is updated annually. So we will have a new fee adoption for a fee in lieu payment on a tree. On chapter 1749, the Natural Resource Overlay District, under page 66 of 180, under the section 1749-110 with the vegetated corridor, we have brought the reconfigured the table that specifies the width of the vegetated corridor to make it easier to read. Previously, we had a kind of a mixed up column for intermittent and perennial streams that didn't make as much sense. So this is the old table from 1749 that specifies the width of the vegetative corridor. And the table that it replaces in the new code, basically what that specified was how much the maximum disturbance area was if you had a constrained lot of record. And that's in a separate section of the code. It doesn't need to be on this table. So it's a simpler table. Under maximum disturbance area allowances for highly constrained lots of record. These are existing lots where the Natural Resource Overlay District takes up a large portion of the lot. We have reduced the maximum disturbance area from 5,000 to 3,000 square feet for a single-family residential, or actually for any residential zone, because we have lots of record in the city that are 5,000 square feet. Subsequently, those lots would be permitted to develop their entire lot under the provisions of what was proposed. So we're proposing reducing that to 3,000 square feet. And under section C of that same section, the maximum setback from the top of bank on Abernathy Creek, Mule Creek, or Livesey Creek has been proposed to be reduced from 100 feet to 50 feet. From 50 feet to 25 feet from the top of bank of any tributary, just due to the constraints placed upon lots of records in those zones. We're also adding a section saying that if the highly constrained lot of record cannot comply with any of the above standards, a maximum disturbance area of 1,500 square feet may be permitted. Mitigation would be required in all these situations.
So make sure there's not a regulatory taking.
Right.
You have to give an option, pretty restrictive option.
Let's see, the next new section is under section 1749-150 with respect to vehicular or pedestrian paths and roads. That's on page 69 of 180. Wanted to specify that no fill or excavation shall occur within the ordinary high water mark of a stream without the approval of the Division of State Lands or the Corps of Engineers. The same provision as is allowed for utility lines. And for stormwater facilities in section 155, we're adding a clause that states that the stormwater facilities may encroach up to half the distance of the NROD corridor. This is in a situation where you're designing a storm pond to city specifications with native species and those sorts of things. And, however, we are not permitting more than 1,000 square feet encroachment without a type 3 application. So as a type 2, you can review it at staff level. Type 3 will come before the planning commission.
Most detention facilities are in the 8,000 and 9,000 square feet, and so really the 1,000 is like a small connection. And the point is, if you are going to build a detention facility within the natural resource overlay district, it's really, you need to go through a type 3 public process to show that you're putting together a quality development that's going to add value. And this one can, a lot don't. And so that's the purpose of that.
Next section under 1749-180 mitigation standards. The mitigation amounts, although was not stated in the code, the mitigation requirement is basically based on the encroachment into the buffer, not the feature itself. So what we're regulating is, 15 feet, 50 feet, 200 feet. That's the amount of the buffer, and your disturbance area within that buffer determines your mitigation. So what we did not intend is that if you are removing a wetland or encroaching into a wetland under a Corps permit or a Department of State Lands permit, you're doing additional mitigation for that area of the feature itself, since that's above and beyond what our mitigation standards were meant to require.
Or permit, as a full, they'll be mitigating through their process for the actual wetland or stream. And through us, through the parallel process, they'll be mitigating the vegetative buffer because we don't regulate the actual water body. It just felt odd to be looking at disturbance area. You're like you're double dipping in a sense. You'd be already mitigating through the Division of State Lands and Army Corps of Engineers.
And under section 1749, sub 240, the section is called density transfer. We're clarifying the language and adding the tables that we just described for the tree protection code to allow permitted modifications to residential dimensional standards to allow for a transfer of density. So under 1749, it really is an on-site density transfer. You're either creating a tract or a conservation easement area and taking a proportion of the allowed density on that non-buildable area and adding it to the rest of your site. However, we are being more specific as to what the setback requirements are going to be when you do that, pursuant to tables 1749, 240A through C. So if there are any questions about those, try to answer them.
Okay.
All right, the next sections are with respect to,
So if you want to go to page 176 out of 180, let's go back to the memo. And it's page 6 of 8 of the memo. And there's two new additions I'd like to highlight. One is under 1765 master plan. And it's the second bullet, removing the term safely from 1765 050C master plan criteria. This term can be very vague in analyzing perceived off-site transportation concerns. The only language that's in the master plan code still offers the ability to look at off-site conditions, but the term safely is really a battle of two engineers, and if you could get both sides. And what we're looking at is what is your off-site impacts? Is it likely it's congestion issues? It's capacity issues. So we wanted to take the safety issue, which could be a procedure, a safety issue, away from criteria. The second, chapter 1780, communication facilities, and this was a request actually by one of the communication facilities representatives, and we actually agreed with it. There was no option if you did not want to put any support facilities underground. We had no option out to create a screen enclosure or screen wall. And so what we did is we made sure that the screen wall was high quality. And so it's a masonry wall that's covered in brick or stone or no exposed CMU. And that option is allowed as an alternative to placing underground. Because some of these units nowadays, just really placing underground is really hard to get access towards. And so we went towards the make a really nice screening area. So that's now an option under 1780 110E. And finally, just to recap, through the Planning Commission hearings, 3 property owners requested rezone either on their property or neighboring property. Our comments are available in the memo, they'll be forwarded on through the record, but for the most part, staff is commenting that these text amendments really don't fit within the scope, and a lot of, all 3 of these projects either had pre-existing reasons of why they were zoned that way or have a lot of outstanding issues in regards to future redevelopment that we're not ready yet to look at rezoning. And unfortunately, I have to repeat Mr. Walter back. Mr. Burgess here this evening. The secondary issue regarding acknowledging non-conforming lots that were created illegally, and I'm going to let Pete speak to that a little bit.
Mr. Berg explained his particular situation. However, staff's been working with Mr. Berg and with AKS Engineering and Forestry on either a partition or a subdivision of land which Mr. Berg owns. The city does not consider this land divided or partitioned yet. However, a tax lot was created and a house on the property was sold, and subsequently we call that a legal land division. And it frequently happens in the county where this thing might have happened in the past, where building permits have been issued by a municipality for a lot that did not go through a land division process. The county could validate a lot if it could have met particular code provisions. And Mr. Berger proposed some language at a previous hearing to try to incorporate some of the language that allows lot validation into the city code. There were a couple of issues with the language that was proposed, because one of the requirements under that language was that you would have had to meet land division criteria at the time that the sale occurred. And this partition, this tax lot creation would not have been able to meet those criteria. So it did not provide an appropriate remedy as proposed. Staff has recommended that there is an appropriate remedy in place. We've had pre-application conference with Mr. Berg and his consultants to discuss several options that might include either a subdivision of the land in question with a variance procedure, or a partition of the land in question with a variance procedure as well. And those are permits that have not been applied for yet, but do provide an opportunity or an administrative review in order to bring the land in question into compliance with the land division code. The overarching issue is that we don't recommend creating a process which supersedes our land division ordinance. We don't want to create a validation process which may get away from the benefits that are accrued to the city through the partition code and the land division code, because we need neighborhood connectivity, for example. We may need right-of-way dedication in order to allow future development of adjacent properties and those sorts of things. And merely validating lots that don't go through the land division process does not always provide those same benefits. That being said, we're still willing to work with Mr. Berg. Part of the issue that I believe he has is that the land is currently under 2 owners, and the other owner may not want to agree to a land division process. However, that's not a situation that the city can remedy at this point, unless we propose some kind of code language alternative. I'm not recommending doing that at this point. So any questions about that, I'll be happy to answer them.
It's complicated, and I'd be interesting to see it drawn out.
Right.
So you can kind of get a picture of it, because I'm familiar with the property, there's the area, and
For this reason, we're recommending that it go through an applicant-initiated process. So, legislative review. In short, there's a large parcel of land with a house on it. And tax lots created that is larger than would normally be allowed under our partition code, because we have a 2-lot partition allowance for an existing home, where you split off a lot for an existing home, you leave a larger parcel behind. The intent is that the parcel that's left behind with the home on it can't be further subdivided, and the larger parcel has to go through a subdivision process. And what would the the tax lot that was created basically created 2 equal lots that didn't meet that requirement. Yeah, there's probably land to create 5 lots under the net developable area on this parcel of land, and that's an opportunity as well. With right-of-way connections and the use of a flag lot for 1 lot. The other lots could potentially be developed with variances to lot width that would allow compatible single-family development. So we believe that that's the appropriate process.
well, I'm sure when we have an opportunity to listen to Mr. Berg, we'll probably have more questions, and you'll be available, I know, to talk.
And before Mr. Berg comes up, I just wanted to really kind of next steps. If the planning commission chooses to go carry forward a recommendation to the city commission of the L 0801 6-month update proposal as amended, and including amendments we discussed tonight in the record, this will go to the city commission in March. And I don't know how many will take, but just to reconfirm, Tony, the work session has been moved to the March 9th? Okay. So in that case, we're going to be presenting the packet you see tonight, which we'll clean up some of the grammatical issues, but the question I have for you is, it seems this is a work session between the planning commission and the city commission, and we're here as staff to help you. How would you like to see our role, and what issues do you want to make sure rise to the top of this process? What do you want to get to this, move forward on the city commission's concept and ideas? What I'm looking for is feedback from you, because we won't be meeting again until after this work session. So you don't have to do it right now, and we can talk about it before we adjourn tonight, but we're looking for direction of how you would like the work session go. Simultaneously, we need to provide all this background information to them, but really it's a chance for you to talk to the city commission.
Yeah, well, we can talk about it further, but, I always like to see those types of meetings be between the planning commission and the city commission, as opposed to staff reiterating everything. And I think it's important that we give specifics and key items, and, they give them their information up front, let them read it, and then we can address the key items that we felt were important and have discussion on that. Because I'm sure there'll be enough of those that we can do, but we want to give them the I want to have the opportunity to express our concerns and issues as we went through this process. They probably haven't heard or may not hear all of our discussions, so I think it's important that we have that opportunity.
Well, that's before the end of the meeting. That's the goal this evening. We can close staff presentation and open up public comments, and then we can revisit this before we move to
Very
final.
good. So you've completed your staff presentation. Very good. Any questions, staff, right now at this point? All right. Well, then let's do that. We'll open up the public hearing at this point and ask. Do we have anybody signed up, or should we just call from the audience?
We do. Did I?
Okay. Oh, there you go, right on there. All right, Mr. Bird.
Highway 213, Oregon City. What Pete said is right on the money, other than I can't put in an application without the neighbor signing on the application, and the neighbor is not willing or can't sign on the application. So basically I'm stuck. I can't sell or divide the property or do anything with it. The tax assessor reduced the value of the property from $180,000 down to $37,000 now because it's not buildable. So we're basically got a property that's just going to be sitting there for, I've owned it for 5 years. It's got 2 services going at 2 water meters, 2 sewer lines connected to the property, and that's it. Without some type of process, it just going to sit there. That's all I have on that one piece of property. I did have some comments. I did submit for another zone change on a piece of property on Highway 213. That originally was brought into the city as R10 and then rezoned to R2, and the city commissioners changed it because it had a building on it plus residential units. Changed it to industrial use. It's got a special thing in the code under R2 for my use. I've worked with ODOT. They've changed the access to allow for access to the commercial building and into the rental with one large entry so we can get trucks and stuff in and out of there. And I've probably been doing a permit for my own business center, and I'm in the zone. I went through quite a hassle. And if I, in the future, if I die or something and my children want to rent the building or something out, I'm stuck. So, and they're going to be stuck. We've got a commercial building and a piece of property, and ODOT's already signed off. We've got a permit right away, for the business, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any questions of Bruce? Okay, anyone else would like to speak on any of the agenda items here? Seeing none? All right, then we'll close the public hearing and bring it back up here for discussion. I would like to say that I do, in Ms. Berg's specific issues, I'm concerned about that. I'm sorry that that's all happened. I would like to see further discussion with that, although I think it needs to be outside the realm of this. He's obviously got some issues that he needs to work through with either other property owners or within the city, and see if there's something we can do to help. You know certainly more than I do. My feeling is I'd like to see somebody help him pursue that, but I like to see it outside the realm of what we're doing tonight. I don't think it makes sense to do it in a code change environment right now.
I agree. I definitely agree. It's too complicated. It's too issues. And I agree. Right.
Okay. Well, let's discuss this and see where we want to go with it. Any further questions of staff or anything we need to bring up at this time? Talked this through many a time. For the audience out there watching it, we've been through this pretty much word by word, and I think we're pretty well satisfied with.
And then went through it again.
And then went through it again. That's right. And this is probably the 15th time we've seen it, but a lot of work went into it. I think it's important for the city what we've done and as a group with the staff, and again, staff's done an excellent job in preparing this and bringing it forward. And I think they listened to us, and we were able to change some things that we wanted as a planning commission. And I think we've got a really good package here that we'll forward. I'd like to forward onto the city commission for discussion and have a further discussion one more time at our work session, so we can give them our input. So I'm open for a motion or further discussion.
I'll move to recommend approval of the municipal code text amendments, L0801, as amended in the record.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Lazoie, second. Pete?
Chair Powell? Commissioner Lazoie? Commissioner Stein? Commissioner Groner? Motion carries.
Yeah, very good. We'll see this again on the 9th of March at a work session. Okay.
All right, sir. I'm going to give you some updates. We have a couple pre-apps coming in this week. We have the Cove Apartments, so that'd be phase 3 of the Cove Master Plan. I believe it's 220 apartments, multiple unit sizes. It's going to come in as one application with 2 building phases, just because of the number of units being created and brought online. We have the Housing Authority of Clackamas County is coming in with their pre-application meeting tomorrow afternoon. And then we also have a pre-application meeting with Danielson's for the redevelopment of their property. That leads into, you've probably seen discussions about the city's looking into Eastham School. So there is information if citizens who have questions on the city's website or the library. Frequently asked questions document has been created that kind of explains where we're at, has some financing in there, some of the move out dates that we're looking at, some of the reasons why we're considering this move. And if you do have questions, you can't find it, you can call City Hall or contact Maureen Cole is the library director. And then also at the March 3rd, 2010, it's a Wednesday night, 7 p.m., the City Commission will be holding a public hearing to discuss the possibility of this location for a facility, for a library facility. Park Post annexation went before the City Commission last Wednesday. It passed 3-2, so it'll be going to a vote in May. There were some issues, concerns addressing adequacy of police services to be able to service these new, if these areas are annexed, all the housing units out there. The comprehensive plan uses the term adequate. We don't have a standard, you're well aware. We don't have a 1.1 per thousand police officers or a certain number response time as a review criteria, so that the term adequate is certainly open to interpretation and how that's applied. But there's concern. We've been discussing it for years. We think we've added that annexation fee. You've been seeing more and more of those proposed by applicants when they come in. That really gets you through that first year when you've got that separation between when those housing units come on and when those properties hit the tax rolls. And we have been able to add some additional police officers over the last couple of years. But we're moving forward. Are we where we want to be? Maybe not. So that's just some concerns that were raised and legitimate ones at that.
So how is it that decisions get made as to what the appropriate staffing is for the police department?
That is a policy decision of the City Commission.
The elected officials make that decision.
Correct.
Okay.
They control general fund, how those monies are spent, even down to the tax rate and what services we provide as a city. So it's a very, very large policy question of, are we adequate, are we moving forward, or are we inadequate?
I'd like to be at that meeting when it's discussed.
Probably seeing, we have 5 city manager candidates be coming through the city. We'll have 4 will be touring the facilities and meeting with folks tomorrow. We'll have 1 on Wednesday. So that process is moving forward. As you're well aware, our current city manager, Mr. Patterson, will be done March 31st. So that date is quickly approaching. March 1st, it's a Monday, the CIC meeting. The Cove Apartments, as well as the 213-205, the jug handle project that we received federal funding for, will be brought by, in this case, the Cove representatives. And for the jug handle, it'll be our Public Works Department and their consultants. We'll be bringing those projects forward to the CIC, since both of those projects are located in their designated. We don't have a neighborhood association in that area, so CIC takes over that responsibility. So they'll be presenting those, and we'll probably see the land use applications for both of those in the near future to get those projects moving forward. No, that'll be a Monday. Yeah, the first Monday is 3/1. I believe it is 7 o'clock at the fire station. We already talked about on March 9th. It's a Tuesday. We'll have the joint work session with the City Commission to go over. I will get you that time. It depends on how much is on the agenda. Kind of determines how early it is. And then, as we also talked a little bit about the Southeast Concept Plan, we've been collecting Metro past the construction excise tax. So we have Metro's holding approximately $200,000 or so for that South End Concept Plan. I think it's just a matter of applying for the money, as well as trying to address some staffing levels to be able to do that concept plan. And then the other part of that is that $200,000 won't pay for it all. With some of the concerns we have moving forward for the next fiscal year, that's something we're looking at, but we're probably going to delay a little bit longer before we dive into that one. And then the last thing would be that we're continually trying to move our planning commission packets and historic review board packets to be exactly the same as city commission in terms of formatting, distribution, how we prepare them internally. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes for archiving this information, so that we have a good, accurate record of it, making sure we get everything up electronically and whatnot. So it's still a work in progress, but as you've probably seen tonight, we've now instituted commission reports at the front of them, which is exactly like what we do at City Commission. So any concerns or feedback is always welcome, and we'll try and implement them if we can.
I like it. It's a good idea. It makes sense. I should have done it long before now, but it's.
And a lot of, Nancy I's done a great job of kind of moving the whole city in this direction. So software looks actually really nice. Be able to get everything up electronically. It's in one location. So it's working well. Reducing our copying drastically, which is just resource and staff time to just create these packets. It was just a lot. I mean, it's a day. So we're cutting that down greatly. So that's much appreciated by all of us over in the planning department.
I have a question on the Cove Apartments. Phase 1 and 2, if I remember correctly, phase 1 was grading, phase 2 is
Structure, love roads, and
so those have not been applied for or come through, or have they?
Phase 1 and 2, the detailed development plan was approved concurrently with the concept plan, but we've got an erosion control permit that we've seen for the site. Engineering department's working on the mass grading and the infrastructure engineering plans, so
It's in progress.
it's in progress.
Will the dredging be moving forward, or?
I'll get back to you on that. I know that we're hoping that we are almost done going through. I think the last review was with NIMS. So I think they're the last agency to comment unless something else comes up. But I can get back to you with where we're at in that progress. But I know we're hopeful that we're going to move forward with that very quickly. That we won't miss another window when it does come open to do that work. I believe it's during the summer, like June or July through August, September, somewhere in there. But I can get back to you with the exact status and dates.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for the update.
Pleasure.
Good to see there's some things happening. That's exciting.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Starting to get some inquiries finally.
Good. Well, very good. Okay, anything from the commission? All right, if there's nothing else then, we are adjourned for this evening. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all listening to us.